Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm working on my Elephant Penjing, and we're saying goodbye to the Elephant Penjing. I'm going to repot these trees into a new landscape, sort of a Canadian landscape, and we'll be saying goodbye to the elephants. The elephants will reappear with my acacia planting that will be coming in the future. I potted up the main tree in this Penjing back in July of 2015. So it's been in this pot for 9 years without any root pruning. And it's getting hard to water this planting. It uses so much water. And the main tree has become quite beautiful, especially from the view over here. I'll show you that. If I rotate the planting around, you can see this tree has some beautiful sweeping branches on it. It's looking really good. So I'm either going to put it in its own pot or rearrange the trees to highlight this side of the tree. And I have that great big mica pot that I can plant this Penjing in. So it should be quite exciting, root pruning and arranging these trees into the new pot. And I'll probably add some stones and make it look really, really cool, I hope. So my first step is to deconstruct this landscape. I'll start by removing all the elephants. Yeah, I've grown a lot of acacia trees from seedlings, and eventually the elephants will go with those trees. I'm going to remove these rocks. And that leaves me with the landscape. So this planting is just planted in a plastic nursery tray. It's all falling apart. So it definitely needs a better pot. An interesting fact about the main tree in this planting, it was started by Edna from the KW Bonsai Society. She grew it from a young seedling for 17 years, and then she was getting towards the end of her life, and she gave all her trees away, and she gave this one to me because she thought I would like it, and I did like it. So I've been growing this tree now for probably 30 years, which makes the total age of this tree 47 years. It's been in training as a bonsai. It's been in a pot. So it's my oldest tree that's being trained as a bonsai. I'm going to get the planting out of the pot now, so I'll just kind of grab the main trunk here and lift and pull and separate if possible. There we go. So the seed tray can go. It's done its job. It's all broken up. And I'll begin to rake out the soil from the roots. So the other trees in this planting are getting quite old too. They were planted, I think in 2016. They were just young seedlings that I've been training, and they've all kind of got a bit of a windswept style to them. Because they were growing in a clump. So I think I can rearrange them to make a pretty nice planting. I'm hoping anyway. I think they'll end up as a group, but I'm not sure. I'm going to separate all the trees, and then I can play around with arranging them and see how they fit together. And if, you know, the main tree, maybe it just needs to be by itself in a pot, or maybe it would look better in a landscape planting. So that's something I'll see in the future. My main job now is to rake out the soil and separate the trees, which will be quite a task because they've been in this pot for so long. And they've grown quite well in this pot. The trees are nice and healthy. They kind of suffered the one summer. We had a really hot, dry summer. and it was hard to water them enough. So I think, today is going to help getting them in fresh soil, a little deeper a pot. I am very close to getting the first tree separated from the group. I might have to do a little pulling here. Some of these roots are entwined. I got that root out. This one's stuck in the other root base here. I'll have to cut that one. It's just not pulling out. There's a long one there. Okay, so the first tree is separated. I'll put that in the water until I'm ready to root prune it. I am about ready to separate the second tree. It's loose here. There's just a few more roots holding it in. Just gently pull. Come on. There. So that tree can go in the tub of water. So the reason I'm repotting these now is that they've been in the greenhouse for the winter and they're starting to grow. So normally, if these trees were left outside, I can repot them. I've done it as late as early June. They just stay dormant until then when they're outside after a cold winter. But these ones were spoiled in the greenhouse here and they're starting to grow already. So I'll put that in the water and work on separating the other 3 trees. As I remove soil from the roots, I'm just putting it in this tray over here, and then I can use it as garden soil in the future. So I'm just using the end of my root rake kind of like a root hook and just kind of coming in and trying to untangle everything. Removing the soil in the process. It's a lot of work. It's something you just have to do slowly and carefully. You're always going to damage some roots, but you try and keep it to a minimum. So the trees are kind of getting a little bit looser. They're starting to wiggle a bit. I am very close to separating the main tree from these other 2 now. It's loose. There's just a few intertwined roots I've got to sort out in here. Luckily these were in good bonsai soil, so it makes separating them a little easier. Let me just see if I can wiggle it away. There it comes. A lot of roots on this main tree. Yeah, so that is, pretty well separated. There's a lot of tangled roots here that I'm going to need to. I could cut them. I mean, I'm not going to be using these long roots, so I might as well just make a clean cut through them and separate the trees. They're just too far away from the trunk to be of any use. So there I go. The main tree is separated. It's got a fairly good root system on it. It's very compact on this side where it was against those other trees, but it's got a lot of roots. So I'll put this tree in the water, get it soaking, and separate my last 2 trees. The last 2 trees are ready to be separated. Wow, look at all those roots. Just a little bit tangled again. Yeah, I'll just cut those. That's that tree separated. And this one, well, I'm going to cut off this tangled mess of roots here. Okay, so I'll put those trees in water, just let them soak for a bit, clean up, and then we'll come back and begin the root pruning. I've got the largest tree out. I've washed the root system. So now let's go in and have a look at the roots and prune them up. So here is a look at the roots. So you can see there's a lot of roots that have grown really long in the pot. So I'm going to start by trimming those back. They're way, way too long. So that's a little more compact of a root system. So I'll take the mat of roots away. And then I need to do a little more combing out of the roots. There's a bit of soil in here still. So I'll just kind of do a bit of root raking. Just trying to sort out these radial surface roots. So right away I notice there's a root sticking up here, and that has got to go. It's just kind of sticking up out of the soil. There's lots of roots underneath it that I can use as surface roots. So I'm going to prune that off, and I may, be able to prune it back a little further once I rewash the root system and get the soil out. So that's got that taken care of. So the root system is a little one-sided. There's not much going on back here. So I think, putting it in new soil will allow that side to grow out a bit, give it a bit more room. I have got the root system washed again. So there's a look at it. So let's start underneath. There's a few kind of roots that are getting a little long. I'm going to snip those back, keeping it flat on the bottom. If I was to grow this like over a rock or something, then clearing out these roots at the base of the tree or shortening them allows you to do that. So there's a look at the root system now. So it's a little long in some places. I'm going to do a profile prune, just trimming it back. Just helping to even out the root base. You can see it's a little one-sided. There's not a whole lot growing out this side. There's one root here, you can see it's too high. I'm going to snip that off. There's a few root hairs sticking up here I can remove. They're also just too high. There's a root here that's too high. I'll snip that away. There's one growing upwards here. I'll get rid of that. And then I've got to clean, I removed that thick root here. I'm going to clean that up. So I'll come in with my knob cutters and just take it off at the base. I think that's good. And that'll heal over nicely. The rest of the root system's looking quite good. There's some roots that aren't so radial that I'll prune away. But it's not a bad looking root base. This one's sticking up too high. This one is tangled. This one's sticking up too high. This one's a bit high here. Pruning off some of these tips that are going a funny direction. Yeah, that's looking quite good. So I think, you know, there's not a lot of root work to do in this tree. Its root system's looking really good. A few hairs here I'll just clean up that are sticking up. One sticking up there, one sticking up there. Even this out a bit more. Okay, I think that's good. I think that's a good looking root system on this tree. Very happy with that. So the front of the tree will be somewhere here. So, you know, the roots, there's not a lot here, but hopefully in the future that'll grow some more roots up that side. I can always twist it a little bit like that. I think that's the front of the tree. Yeah. Okay, well, that's root pruned. Let's get out the other trees and root prune those too. Here is another tree. So again, all these long roots can be pruned back. Making the root system a lot more compact. Make it a little flatter on the bottom. Like that. Then I've got to do a little bit of combing just to sort out the roots once again. And now I can do a little more of a detailed pruning. Root sticking up here I can take off. This one could be reduced back a bit. This one, it crosses another root. I'm going to remove it. This one's a little high, but it's not too bad. This one's too high in the root plane. This one's sticking up. So the root system's fairly balanced. I have one thick root here that I need to remove some vigor out of it. I'll let the others catch up. So I'm just going to do a bit of pruning on it. Yeah, I don't think I want to do any more than that. I'll keep this root even though, no, I'm going to get rid of that one. It's just sticking up a bit too high. That one's a bit high too. That's looking pretty good now. You notice that some of the roots fall away, and they're dead roots. Over the many years, fine roots can die off in the winter, and then they regrow in spring. So you end up with a lot of kind of black roots that are dead. And that's quite normal. It happens in winter in nature. Okay, so that can go back in the water. It's ready for planting. Here is the next tree. So again, these long roots can come off. like that. Quite an interesting root base on this tree. So there's a root here that's sticking up. I'm going to remove that. This one's also sticking up. I'm going to remove that one. This one's hit the edge of the pot and gone a funny direction, so I'll prune that back. It was off a little flatter on the bottom. Bit of a dead top on that root. Prune that back. This one's sticking up. Get rid of that. There's a dead root here. Quite a large section. That. Well, actually, there is a living part attached to it, so that's good. There's a root here that crosses across the bottom of the tree. I'm going to snip that off. Like that. There's a few roots here that are going a funny direction. I'll get rid of those. This one too. It's going a funny direction. These ones aren't great, but can't do much about that. And I think that's getting pretty close to being root pruned. Like that. Okay, back in the water for that one. Here is the next tree. Yeah. So there's a root here sticking up. I'm going to take that off. I'm going to prune these very long roots back. Like that. There's a dead root sticking up here. I'll take that off. Part of that's sticking up. Bit of a profile prune. I'll take this one back further. Okay. So I'm really taking these root systems down, and I'll have to take very good care of these trees afterwards, misting them, keeping them above freezing, keeping them well watered. Otherwise they won't recover. You know, any bonsai work you do to a tree has some risk to it. Okay, so this is a bit of a strange looking root system. I've got the trunk kind of comes down, the root system's over here, and I have this one root over here. And I'm wondering, do I keep that root? I don't think so, because, you know, if this is my root plane, I either has to have a root sticking up in midair, and I think this gives me a bit of a a windblown look to the trunk. So I'm going to remove that root. So I'll just prune it off flush like that, and then I'll clean up that cut, making it a bit concave like that. And it's possible, you know, a strip of the trunk could die off because I've removed that thick root there, but I think that'll be okay. It'll just add to the character of the tree. So now you can see when I plant it, my root base can be down lower. There's a root sticking up here I can remove. This one, I think I gotta get rid of it. It's just a little too high. And this one too. Yeah, I think that's it. That's got that tree root pruned. Okay, here is the last tree to be root pruned now. So you can see this part of the root got torn away. And this tree has not the greatest root system. It has like a ball of roots down low here. And I've got a surface root way up here, one in the middle, roots down here. So yeah, there's no kind of root plane. I think it'll have to be, the soil level will have to be somewhere here. So I'm going to prune off this lower part of the root system. Comb out what's left here. And then there's not a lot. I mean, this one sticks up here. I can prune it back. Prune that one back. A few of these longer ones. Some from the bottom. Yeah. It's one of those multi-plane root systems. I got roots here, roots down here. I don't think I could cut it off here or the tree might die. If I remove some of these upper roots. It's a nice root, that one. I like the way it kind of flows outwards. There is one root here that kind of, if I'm trying to develop a radial root system, it's kind of growing underneath these other roots. So I'm going to take this one off. That's my big root cut for today. If I do choose to make a penjing, planting all the trees in a forest, I've got this large mica pot here. It's a Korean made pot. It's a nice dark color. It's large. Yeah, it would be good. So I'll keep that in mind. I'm going to look at the trees now and decide what to do with them. I'm going to take an initial look at the trees, try out some different arrangements, and just see how it looks, get a feel for what's possible. So here I go. So here is the largest tree, and it's kind of like a windswept tree. It's all, quite nice. So I would definitely, I wouldn't want the windswept tree over at the edge. I would want it in the pot somewhere about here. And then this tree has sort of a bit of a windswept movement to it. This one does too, a little bit. This one definitely has a bit of a windswept look. With some pruning it could be improved. So yeah, I've got to decide, would this tree look good just by itself? And, that's a difficult decision. I had them in a clump before. And my feeling I think this tree is strong enough that it could be just planted by itself. I think it's a beautiful looking tree. So I think I'll do that. I don't think I need to create a penjing around this tree. I think it has enough going for it that it could be planted by itself and just appreciated for the beauty of a single tree. So I'll have to find a pot for it. Something that fits the tree. Not too big, not too small, not too deep, and not too shallow. So let me look around. I was looking around at pots and I found this one. I wanted a pot with kind of the reddish color to match the reddish color on the trunk of the tree. And it's not a bad sized pot actually. I don't know if the tree will look too heavy, or if the pot will look too heavy for the tree. I don't think I have a better one. I think it'll do, if it's not the perfect pot, it's getting close and it'll do as a training pot. So I think I will put the biggest tree in this pot by itself. All right, let me see how it would look in this pot. I would have it offset like this. When you have a root base established like this, you can't tilt the tree very much, or these roots stick out of the soil and these are buried too deep. So you kind of, once you have those surface roots established, your angle of your tree is kind of locked in. You can rotate it around, but yeah, I think somewhere like that's good. Maybe, here's the center of the pot. That would look too symmetrical, so maybe just offset a bit. And I think that would look nice. And then, in future I can look for a slightly smaller pot if I want. If it's looking like too much pot and too little tree. But I think that's going to do for this season and maybe a couple of seasons. Get the tree, established in the pot. Get a nice mat of roots going. Okay, so yeah, that'll be the pot for the tree. I've got my drainage screens in the pot. I got this pot from the Toronto Bonsai Society. It was $30. And the reason it was cheap is on the back side, one of the feet has a little chip. Just a little one. So I thought that was a good deal. It's a nice pot. It's a nice color, a nice size. I'm adding my base layer of soil to the bottom of the pot. Got my dust mask on. I'm stepping back now, having a look at the tree in the pot. I think maybe tilted a little more towards the back. More like that. And I think I could tilt the trunk a bit more. It's a little vertical here. If I kind of tilt it like this, I think it's more interesting. Something like that. Yeah, I like that better. As far as the position in the pot, it's not bad. I think it could come a little more in the center. Something like that, maybe. That looks better. I think that looks quite good, actually. I would tilt it back just a little bit too. But I think that's pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to plant the tree now. Fill it in with soil. Work it into the roots. There's a look at how the roots fit in the pot. They're quite good in there. I've added some soil around the roots. I worked it into the root base. And that's as much soil as I have. I'll have to mix up some more soil. I'm a little short. I still have my tools holding the tree in place here until I get that soil mixed up, and then I'll place some stones around the tree to hold it in place as the roots get established. I've got a fresh batch of soil mixed up so I can continue adding soil to the pot here. This soil is damp, so I don't need a dust mask if there's no dust coming off of it. My bag with the Stay Dry in it, or the Safety Zorb, had a hole in it and it was outside in the rain and it just got wet. So now I've got to remove these tools without the tree tipping over. That's the plan. I think what I'll do is I'll top my soil up here and get some stones in place, and then I'll work on this back part because I don't want the tree tipping over. Otherwise I'd have to go through the whole process of planting it again. So I'll get some stones to put on the soil. Okay, I've got some good heavy ones. That will definitely hold the tree in place. So I'm going to try and position this one here. Will it fit? Maybe it'll just fit right there. Yeah. And then I'll put this one over here. And I can remove these tools that were holding the tree in place. Well-watered tools. They'll dry out. And I can add my soil in around the back now. This tree will stay in the greenhouse here until the better weather comes. More spring-like weather. Trying to keep the tree above freezing if possible. I'm stepping back, having a look at the tree now. It needs pruning, but I'm going to wait until everything's growing with a lot of vigor before I tackle the pruning on it. Yeah, I think it looks good. I like seeing the tree by itself. Yeah, that'll be its home for the next couple of years, at least. And I'll work on kind of styling the top of the tree once it regains its vigor. I've got the largest tree planted all by itself. So now I have 4 more trees and I've got to decide what I'm going to do with those. So I've got, various trees. I'm wondering if I should just put them in individual pots and kind of grow each tree as a specimen tree all by itself. Difficult decision. I'd have to, if I kept the trees together, I'd make a forest, and I don't think any of these trees are, good enough or strong enough that the forest would look good. They're all kind of about the same size trunks, same heights, everything. They're kind of, I don't think it would make a nice forest arrangement. I would need like a taller, thicker trunk tree as the main tree and these more supporting trees. So I think I'll pot them up individually. Each one will get its own pot and then we'll just develop them from there. I've got some of these plastic training pots. Now they're pretty big, so what I think I'll do is I'll try and plant 2 trees to each pot. So maybe, the skinny one and a thicker one together, and maybe this one and this one together. I'll try that. Here's a look at the 2 trees in the pot. So I wouldn't say it's any great arrangement or anything. It's just 2 trees in a line in a pot, and so I'll work on developing the trees, getting better and better branch structure to them, over the years, and then they'll get their own pot someday. I've got the remaining 2 trees planted, and again, it's no great arrangement or anything. I'll just train the trees over the next couple of years, and as I said, they'll get their own pot eventually. My Elephant Penjing is no more. I've separated all the trees to eventually become their own trees in their own pots. I think it'll be a good move. I think these trees will develop nicely into the future. So I've got to keep them warm, well watered, protected here in the greenhouse until they start growing with a lot of vigor. Then they'll go outside for the summer. So that is all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.